Yeah, I didn't shy away from saying the truth, even one iota, since day one. I believed that people would inevitably realize the unavoidable reality. And thankfully, there were plenty of others who also recognized right from wrong and literally continued to protest and never shied away from keeping up the pressure. I don't get it. Hey, well, I'm going to skip this. I can't even talk about this any longer. It's just so stupid.
We're following an issue that is being closely tracked here in Washington. What is being labeled the worst case scenario of famine unfolding in Gaza. That's a dire warning that we are getting from a food security agency that is backed by the United Nations. And that group says that more than 20,000 kids were admitted for treatment for acute malnutrition between April and mid-July. More than 3,000 of them were severely malnourished, and images like these show the staggering human toll that we are watching play out. One child seen shoveling as much flour as he could off of an aid truck into his own T-shirt as he turned into a makeshift bowl to carry that flour. The president today acknowledged what he and the world have been watching.
I think everybody, unless they're pretty cold-hearted or worse than that, nuts, there's nothing you can say other than it's terrible when you see the kids. And those are kids, whether they talk starvation or not, those are kids that are starving. They are starving. And you see the mothers, they love them so much, and there's just nothing they seem to be able to do. They got to get them food, and we're going to get them food.
Yeah, if only we could find out who's doing this, who's allowing this. I don't know, man. Am I the... What? You mean to tell me I'm the president of the United States of America that is single-handedly responsible for Israel's genocide? The only country more responsible, or if not just as responsible for Israel's genocide? Man, my hands are tied. My hands are tied. It's just, you don't understand. My hands are so tied. One phone call, chat. Do not forget. Literally one phone call. Boop. Pull up the phone. Say it's over. It's done. And it's done. One single phone call. That, I think, makes the situation so much worse. And every single person that acted as though that was not the case is a liar. Because if it's not one phone call and Israel doesn't listen, then you deny weapons transfers. And if Israel still doesn't listen and says, okay, we can get weapons elsewhere, then it's sanctions. And if Israel still says, oh, well, we'll get weapons elsewhere and we'll do trade with another country, which, by the way, who the are they going to do trade with at this point? In that predicament, then you invade, okay? Israel knows this, which is why it's just one phone call. It doesn't have to go beyond that.
The situation, of course, that the president is talking about did not happen overnight. Israel cut off all aid to Gaza back in March, saying without evidence that Hamas was stealing all of it, according to a U.S. government review. But when that blockade was partially lifted in May, Israel started relying on a U.S.-backed aid group, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Since then, the United Nations says more than 1,000 people have been killed by Israeli forces while trying to get food. In the face of growing pressure, Israel has started allowing more aid to trickle in over the weekend, but aid groups have said it is not nearly enough. My source tonight is Senator Bernie Sanders.
After sanctions, what? Sorry, cut off on my end. I'm curious. Invasion. Invading militarily. Invading Israel militarily is the final step if Israel does not comply, but it's not going to happen anyway.
Sanders of Vermont. And Senator, when you hear the Israeli Prime Minister saying there's no starvation happening in Gaza, what, do you believe he's lying?
Of course he's lying. He is a disgusting liar. Israel had a right to defend itself from the terrible Hamas attack. But I think everybody understands that in the last 2.5 years, they've been waging
Bernard,
a
shut
brutal,
up,
horrific,
stop.
Almost unprecedented.
That's definitely getting clip chimped. Oh no, I'm going to be clip chimped where I said if Israel refuses to abide by American sanctions, then they'll get invaded militarily. Really? Oh no. What will I do? I guess I'm being so anti-Semitic for saying that the solution to Israel's genocide literally requires one phone call. And if the phone call doesn't work, then boycotts and sanctions or denying weapons transfers. If denying weapons transfers doesn't work, then sanctions package. And if the sanctions package doesn't work, then you invade Israel militarily. This is just how it works, okay, for every country, but especially important for our allies that require a steady flow of shipment. You can clip it, you can ship it, you can send it to your mama, you can send it to your daddy, okay? For those who said for months, Hasan, you're a terrorist, you're a terrorist, you're a terrorist, you're an anti-Semite, you're an anti-Semite, you're an anti-Semite, you're an anti-Semite, a lot of those are quiet now because they know I was right, okay? So if they're still desperately looking for another thing to hold on to try to demand my deplatforming, okay, I'll continue doing what I'm doing, and then I'll see you in the next 3 to 4 months, okay? You are literally never right. No, don't ban that guy. Come on. It's funny. W Tectone Asmongold El Hassan, he says. No, we need to have some pets, dude. Come on. That's too funny to ban.
Type of war, not just against Hamas, but against the Palestinian people. So you got an area, territory there of 2.2 million people. They have already killed 60,000. They have injured 140,000, most of whom
Marcus Trump owns
women,
you.
Children, and the elderly. They have virtually completely destroyed the entire infrastructure of Gaza, virtually all of the schools, the healthcare system, over 70% of the housing, the water system, and now, as you mentioned, over the last period of time, they have prevented humanitarian aid coming in, and there is now mass malnutrition, and children are starving to death. And tomorrow, I will be offering a joint resolution of disapproval to basically say, we cannot continue to provide military aid to the extremist, racist Netanyahu government that is starving the children of Gaza.
And when you try to force the Senate you're trying to force them to block the sale of weapons to Israel as a result of what you're seeing play out. Do you expect to get more support from Democrats?
We will see. I think there is...
Because of the images we're seeing?
Look, there are a lot of dynamics. And by the way, that takes us to another crisis that goes beyond Gaza, and that is a corrupt campaign finance system. So you have a super PAC called AIPAC that spends hundreds of millions of dollars trying to defend the Netanyahu government. And if you vote for a Sanders resolution or you stand up in other ways in opposition to Netanyahu, they're prepared to fund a whole lot of money against you. But I think the time is now when members of the Senate have got to start listening to their constituents back home. And the American people do not want to spend billions and billions of dollars supporting this horrific war.
What about with the White House? I mean, President Trump is saying that he's seen this, that the First Lady Melania Trump has seen these images. He's saying there is starvation there. You can't fake that. But when he was asked about nude...
Yeah, dude, this is I saw the Jordan Weissman take. Jordan Weissman, as Dems converge on agreement that Israel has been committing an atrocity, I do think there needs to be some reckoning among moderates that while lots of ugly anti-Semitism burst from the left after October 7, the leftists were fundamentally more right about this war, about what this war would become. Then this person responds and says, did centrist Democrats not say up front that we needed a ceasefire ASAP? I feel like I did not remotely exclusively hear this from the left. What a way to massage the narrative. Yeah. Karine Jean-Pierre called calls for a ceasefire repugnant. Okay? ASAP? Get the out of here. ASAP my ass. It's so funny. And also, even this is wishy-washy bullshit. Oh, ugly anti-Semitism burst from the left. The ugly anti-Semitism from the left was hurting people's feelings because we correctly said Israel's an apartheid state that is doing a genocide. Okay? Yeah, comical that centrist writers are writing off early leftist warnings of Israeli genocide as the boy who cried wolf when our analysis was based on an analysis of Zionist political intentions that proved completely accurate. You guys were only right because your analysis of people perpetuating this war just so happened to line up with what they ended up doing. Yes, that is the point of analysis. You probably forgot it while you were wrong about everything for 20 years. It is insane. Benjamin Netanyahu said Amalek literally the day after. Yoav Gallant 2 days after said, we're fighting human animals. We have to shut off their food, their electricity, their water. Oh, wow. It takes a special breed of future seer to literally listen to what the Israeli state members were saying about what kind of war effort that they were going to conduct. Oh, wow. Yeah, there it is. During an October 10th briefing, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, who is uniquely bad at her job, literally called a ceasefire, progressive Congress members who call for a ceasefire in the Middle East, disgraceful and repugnant. They're trying to launder their reputation. It's like, dude, delete your tweets first. What are you doing? You know what I mean? Except you can't delete this shit. It's so stupid. Matt Iglesias, another demon. I'm just deeply reluctant to credit the critics for being right, in air quotes, about this. They at every turn took concrete political actions that made the worst case outcomes more rather than less likely. Matt Iglesias is deeply reluctant to credit those of us who understood on day one that Israel was waging a war of extermination as right. It's so funny that these dipshits are trying to do the, oh, well, I guess we were wrong about the Iraq war while it's literally happening and everyone can see it as being fraudulent. Dude, you have to wait. You have to wait like a couple years before you whitewash and launder your reputation. It's still going on. It doesn't make sense to try and spin on the one hand, while on the other hand, you're still trying to defend your lack of interest in stopping the bloodshed. Who believes this? The appropriate thing to say is, and here is God's honest truth, the appropriate thing to say in this circumstance is, we were wrong, the left was right. A critical examination of why we were wrong and the left was right is necessary so that we don't repeat this mistake again. They won't do it because they're in power. I remember when you decided to change your mind about the Iraq war, but why do you think this keeps happening to you? It's because they're careerists, okay? For many of them, it's just about being a careerist because they know they'll never be punished. Actually, they'll be elevated for being wrong. They're deliberately wrong. They're deliberately obtuse. They're inhumane, amoral monsters, okay? All of them. And I said this on October 8th, and I said this on October 9th, 2023, and I continue to say it. Go back and watch any of the videos that I have from back then that people love clipping out of context to talk about how passionate I was and how wrong I was for being such, for demonstrating such passion. And you will see that anger was perfectly warranted. I was right then and I'm right now. And so are many of you. Many of you who maybe initially thought it's a bridge too far how quickly Hassan is defending Palestinians here. I mean, October 7 just happened, but at least you have the decency to sit there quietly, listen, learn, and change your position as the environment changes. All your Twitch WADs get deleted when you got banned. Wait, what? Yeah, but they come back when I'm unbanned. Yeah. Anti-Semitism in U.S. rages while college protests intensify. Now, police detaining anti-Israel protesters. Worst case scenario, watchdog agency says. Student activism over Gaza. Admirable or ill-informed? Gazans are dying of starvation. One day, everyone will have been against this. Okay? Yeah, I didn't shy away from saying the truth, even one iota, since day one. I believed that people would inevitably realize the unavoidable reality. And thankfully, there were plenty of others who also recognized right from wrong and literally continued to protest and never shied away from keeping up the pressure, because all of that pressure amounted to the public sentiment shifting dramatically, regardless of all of the legal criminal repercussions that people faced. All of the student activists on college campuses that made those college encampments and then got destroyed for it, had their diplomas taken away from them. I was low-key in the exact same position on 10-8. I kind of thought you were being insane when you were talking about Palestine in that way after 10-7, but unsurprisingly, you were right all along. And of course, I now know exactly why you said all that shit. Years of Hasanabi vindication is real. Also, this is precisely the reason why I'm still understanding of people who at least recognize that they were wrong, no matter how far along they are, because there are still plenty of pieces of shit like Matt Iglesias who know better, but are doing it because they're careerists. I tweeted this earlier. I said, for those of you finally coming to terms with what Palestinians have been saying for years, I hope this is a time for self-reflection. If not for careerist reasons, how could you have gotten something so heinous, so wrong? Let this be a wake-up call and start the pressure immediately. It's so crazy to do this. What a clown ass this dipshit is. I think you're blurring issues. I agree with the protest taxes were often counterproductive. Why were they counterproductive? And they were wrong about the stakes in 2024. Why were they wrong? Someone needs to explain to me why those protests were counterproductive. That's why I don't understand what Controversy was talking about too, when she was like, you're just making people angry. That's it. By showing what the Palestinians are screaming about. I mean, look at the environment. The f- do you mean the protests were wrong? If it wasn't for the protests, everyone would have shut the f- up and lived along with their daily lives as the Holocaust kept being unfolded in front of everyone's eyes in broad daylight. What do you mean? What was wrong about the protest tactics? But I also think that in the first month of the war, the left had a better read on what was to come from Israel. What was wrong? What was wrong? No one likes to admit they were wrong, especially about one of the most awful catastrophes of the century. You're 2-2 with Palestine and Iraq, says Jacob Silverman, the Mad Iglesias. This is why it's important when you talk about E or D or Nazi mold. They were and are spreading bullshit defending Israel, among other shit. It isn't just drama. It's trying to show these idiots are wrong on what they spew. Yes, they are objectively wrong. Their politics are objectionable. They're repugnant, but they're also wrong. Who wants to be wrong all the time? This is what I don't understand. You'd rather be wrong in your hug box? It doesn't make any sense. The Times should pay a price. They've been in jihad mode for a long time in a lot of ways. Freak, dude. The more wrong they are, the more the crowd of the angrier the crowd gets, and the bigger that crowd gets that is calling out Israel's genocide, the more Israel defenders lose their minds. They become increasingly unhinged. Do you see? That's what's so crazy about this. The protests were wrong because their team had the presidency at the moment. It's like, I care about the issue. I don't care if it's a D. The only thing I heard from the left was October 7th was good and justified, and I do not feel like this has been vindicated by subsequent events. Oh my God. There were so many exit ramps for these people to get off. Okay? So many different moments where they could be like, okay, this is a bridge too far. So many bridges they crossed. It's getting to a point where you won't be able to cross a bridge. It's already there, and I understand why some people will say, nope, we're far gone at that point, and I agree. But the more bridges you cross, okay, the more aggressive you have to be in defending Palestinians. Like, you have to turn into a Fedayeen, okay? You have to put on the goddamn Al-Qassam Brigade's Al-Aqsa Flood war banner and run around talking about how Hamas is glorious and great at this point to make up for what you have done wrong thus far in this genocide. Okay? You've crossed too many exit ramps, too many dead children in the process that you watched and said, it's justifiable. Okay? If you want to make up for it, you got to turn around and put that banner on. Okay? You got to revert to Islam and talk about the Al-Aqsa floods. Because what else can you do at that point? You know what I mean? So many moments where you could have just been like, maybe this is kind of fucked up, when they were blowing up Lebanon, blowing up Syria. Oh, there are still people who literally think that it was the left's miscalculation for focusing on the genocide and not the Democratic Party's miscalculation for thinking that average people, not just like card-carrying leftists, would actually be horrified by an administration that does not give a about the violence that has unfolded in broad daylight. It was consequential. Okay? It was consequential. Do I need to repent too? I only found out how bad it is. I don't care. You don't have to tell me that you only found out how bad it is after the election. Just keep that to yourself. Especially when you're an anonymous person online. You don't have to literally be like, I was completely oblivious to the death and destruction after a year and a half, you know? That's why whenever I hear someone say, well, what about October 7 now? Okay. When I hear someone say, what about October 7? What about Hamas? Do you condemn Hamas right now, 22 months in? I'm like, you are an animal, dude. What are you talking about? There have been thousands of October 7s, far more consequential and far worse than October 7 ever could be. There's like 3 October 7s a week, dude. What are you talking about, October 7? Yeah, it's not condemn Hamas. Do you condone Hamas? That's the real if you want to act like you're making up for your failures, you got to condone Hamas. Do you condone Hamas is the question. Ridiculous. See, people still have that hang up. They go wild. Is it? It's not even like calculable. Collective punishment is still unacceptable. It's still unacceptable law. Exactly. Which is why what Israel is doing is undeniably evil. Warnock flips, will vote to block weapons. He went back on it. He had originally voted to block weapons, and then he got yelled at by like all of these Israel advocacy groups that masquerade as Jewish advocacy groups. And now he's back. I suspect John Ossoff will also get back as well. Remember, these guys are from a red state, all right? It's especially concerning that Raphael Warnock folded as a person who literally is equipped with the knowledge of liberation theology. I've made it clear I support the state of Israel and its right to defend itself. No more of this. Israel has a right to defend itself. Bullshit. The f*** do you mean? Nazi Germany has a right to defend itself. Does Russia have a right to defend itself? Do we get to decide who has a right to defend itself and who doesn't have a right to defend itself? It seems like it. Palestinians, no right to defend themselves. Yeah, just put the vote in the bag is right. The funniest backlash and subsequent flip happened immediately after October 7. Many of you are not Turkish speakers, so you don't know this. But I made big waves in the nationalist side of Turkish Twitter and Turkish Twitch specifically. Okay? October 8th or 9th, I said Turks kept coming into the chat because they hate Arabs. They were like, oh, dude, you. Hamas are all Arab dogs. You know, we stand with Israel type shit. That's what they were on. Okay. Now they would never admit to that. Okay. But so many came after me so aggressively. I said the Turks defending Israel are dogs. Okay. I said the Turks that are defending Israel are dogs of the West, not realizing that Israel is an extension of American Western imperialism, and American and Western imperialists do not see you any differently than Arabs. I called them servile dogs. They said I was racist. They demanded I get banned. They were losing their minds. You know what's really funny? It took like 3 days for the entire Turkish population to revolt against Israel, and every single person that had said that deleted their tweets calling me out. It was the most swift action reaction I've ever seen in my life. Okay? Turkey to this day is the one country in NATO that hates America and hates Israel. It's like 80% and 90%, which is so funny. I've never seen vindication so fast. Yeah, big Turkish streamers came after me. They were going crazy. They were like doxing my family and shit. What happened? I'm confused. They hate Arabs in Israel. A lot of Turkish people hate Arabs because of the a lot of Turkish people don't like Arabs because of the Syrian migrants. Yeah. Look at this. 93% have a unfavorable opinion of Israel in Turkey. It is the highest percentage. I thought it was a betrayal of the Ottoman Empire by Arabs. That plays a role in it for sure. That definitely plays a role in it. Silmediler ki unutuldu gitti. Kendileri ırkçı oldukları için umurlarında değildi. And while we were having this back and forth, while we were reading this, another country, this time Canada, has mentioned their intention to recognize the state of Palestine at the UN General Assembly in September, subject to commitment by the Palestinian Authority to conduct reforms, Canadian Prime Minister says. Once again, this probably resembles the bullshit French conditional state recognition. You cannot do a shitty state recognition, a false state recognition without actual sovereignty. You cannot do this if you are still, one, arming the IDF, continuing to fund and facilitate the Israeli society broadly. No, it's the French one that originally started. And then the British one came. But the British one was even worse than that because its conditions were, we won't even recognize the state of Palestine if Israel allows aid to come in. Yeah. Two-state solution document endorsed by France, European, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Qatar, the Arab League, circulated at UN and revealed by Times of Israel, calls for dissolving UNRWA without implementing the right of return for Palestinian refugees. I explain. This is Ali Abunima of the Electronic Intifada, okay, one of the more reliable outlets in terms of covering what goes on the ground in Palestine. The document talks about the achievement of a just solution to the Palestinian refugee issue without mentioning or reaffirming the right of return. This is long-established peace-process code for abrogating the right of return, resettling Palestinian refugees outside Palestine so that Jewish demographic supremacy is not threatened, and at best, monetary compensation. It talks about UNRWA handing over its duties not to the government of an independent Palestinian state, but to prepared and empowered Palestinian institutions in the Palestinian territory. In other words, all this takes place prior to the supposed independence of a supposed Palestinian state. It is a formula for dismantling any international institutions and frameworks that protect Palestinian rights. There is much more in this document revealing its anti-Palestinian hostility, including demanding the disarmament of the resistance and handing over its weapons under occupation to the Palestinian Authority and endorsing a demilitarized Palestinian state, while the occupier that is perpetrating a Holocaust retains all of its capacity for genocide. We know what that looks like. It's called the West Bank. And 40,000 Palestinians have been displaced since October 7 in the West Bank. Israeli settlers, armed to the teeth by the Israeli government, getting weapons from the United States government, will go in and kill Palestinians and use Molotov cocktails to permanently displace Palestinians from their ancestral homes. And then the IDF will continue its bloodshed by killing the Palestinians that even are in the vicinity of the Israeli settlers. That's what they want across the board. In the same document endorsed by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Jordan, Turkey, and European countries, etc., they demand that the Palestinian resistance completely disarm in the context of ending the genocide in Gaza and hand over its weapons to Israel's proxy, the Palestinian Authority. Remember, the Palestinian Authority is the governing body of the West Bank. The Palestinian Authority is a part of the Israeli security apparatus. Make no mistake. Regardless of what Benjamin Netanyahu says now about the Palestinian Authority, claiming that it's actually also just like Hamas, and that no statehood should ever exist for Palestinians and Palestine in general, the Palestinian Authority is functionally an arm of the Israeli security apparatus. They work in unison with the Israeli security apparatus. They are the second least popular entity amongst Palestinians in the region. Obviously, the number one is Israel. There is no reference, of course, to the entity committing genocide and disarming. On the contrary, all this is meant to ensure the security of the genocidal settler colony and leave its victims totally defenseless. In other words, they make ending the genocide conditional on Israel achieving its goals. Make no mistake, while this is a step in the right direction, I have also stated that this is completely ridiculous. It's only a matter of impact due to how little, especially these Western European states have offered recognition to Palestinians and Palestine as a nation state. But it's definitely too little too late. And not only is it too little too late, but it's a bait and switch. Yeah, The Onion on October 10th, 2023, New York Times issues apology for reporting Palestinian deaths. 3 days after October 7, mind you. And here it is, the New York Times literally issuing an apology for reporting Palestinian deaths. The reason why they're engaging in this newfound recognition is because they need to soothe the interest of the masses. It has gotten to a point where people are understandably, unimaginably angry and resentful. They have destroyed all notion of the democratic process. Okay? The issue of Israel's genocide being committed with Western weapons is at the heart of the main contradiction that liberal democracies never want you to address. Overwhelming majorities of the public want this to be ended. Overwhelming majorities of the public kind of understand their government's involvement in this process, and yet the politicians themselves refuse to acknowledge it and refuse to do something about it when they have all of the power in the world to stop it. Yes, as friend of the show Felix Biederman has stated, this is like a preemptive land acknowledgement. That is what they're doing. They're offering a preemptive land acknowledgement here. Anyone who has continued to defend Israel at this point, regardless of how they're engaging in this defense, maybe they're saying Israel's doing something bad and it's up, but also the other side is way worse and we have to let Israel continue doing this, is a monstrous piece of shit. It is an increasingly smaller and smaller audience that is demanding this kind of commentary. They will be forever remembered as the Holocaust deniers that they are. They will have participated. When the dust is settled, everyone will know that they have participated in defending and continuing the modern day Holocaust that we have all seen with our own two eyes. Some, as the walls are closing in, refuse to reckon with that reality. They continue to double down, triple down. Others, at least, are quiet. Okay? They realize that the attitude has swung dramatically in the direction of opposing this genocide. So they just know better and they shut the up. But for the Ethan Kleins and the Destinies and the Brett Stevenses at the New York Times of the world, they continue to defend Israel's genocide because they're just stuck. They're unable to recognize, I guess, that they should most likely keep quiet at this point, to shut the up. Even the Asmengolds of the world recognize the situation is untenable, and even they, from what I understand, every now and then keep railing against Israel. What I urge people, you mean they should shut the up as a function of self-preservation? I think they shouldn't shut the up. I think they should be yelling loudly every single day for Israel to stop and to say they were wrong. That is the right thing to do. And there will still be plenty of people who will remember all of the child murder that they actively advocated for. Okay? This should be a moment of repentance. But I understand the situation in front of us. I get it. I recognize it. Okay? So I understand that for public pressure to mount and to continue, there is need for those who have kept quiet, who have actually defended Israel initially, to come out and unconditionally offer support to the Palestinian victims of this Holocaust. Okay? We can figure out what people's previous positions were later. I won't forget. And I know plenty of you will never forget either. And it's totally understandable that you don't. But at this stage, every single person, regardless of how much they dick rode Israel initially, should be screaming bloody murder. Okay? And if they don't because their conscience shifted, they should be doing it out of self-preservation. For DropSite News, I investigated the information warfare specialist, including a Columbia teacher who helped dismantle Gaza's aid network, install the militarized GHF, and spin the narrative around famine and the daily massacre of starving Palestinians. The Information Warfare Consortium shaping the Gaza Holocaust Foundation's PR offensive. Bro, I'm over here talking about a ongoing Holocaust. And it's like, were you not invited to this AMP pool party? What the are you talking about, chatter? Are you okay? Is your brain all right? Guess where that teacher worked before Columbia? Jennifer Counter of the Gaza Human Starvation Foundation is also a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. Another entity that Ethan Klein loves and has propped up as defending Palestinians. Interesting. But why were you very harsh with Jon Stewart yesterday? Those people are way worse than him, bro. We should team kill no matter the teammates. I even side with Nicholas Fuentes on this topic. I don't care. The enemy is my enemy is temporarily my friend. First of all, Nicholas Fuentes. And secondly, the reason why I'm harsh with Jon Stewart is because I know Jon Stewart has a much more radical position. And people should be bold. People should be unafraid to be bold in this circumstance. Just like AOC. I wasn't against Jon Stewart. I just wish that Jon Stewart would be more aggressive in his commentary because the moment demands it. Because when people like Jon Stewart start talking like myself, then that gives permission for others to also come out and have harsh statements that are a necessity at this point. Also, Nicholas Fuentes, once again. Like, get the out of here. The reason why I'm critical of someone like Jon Stewart is the same reason why I'm critical of someone like Bernie Sanders and the same reason why I'm critical of someone like AOC. The moment requires these people to be more aggressive in their stances, to say, no, it's over. Israel is done. Okay? That's it. Because when more and more people say that, especially at a time like this, people that are supposed to be leaders in this movement, people who others look up to in this movement, will then feel emboldened, will then feel galvanized in the correct position, because that is the correct position. Okay? The Zionist project is over. It's done. It was always designed around ethno-religious supremacy and exterminationist policies from the inception of the Israeli state all the way down to the final solution, the Holocaust that Israel is implementing in Gaza. People like Bernie Sanders, people like AOC cannot just sit around and get lapped by cynical grifters like Nick Fuentes or cynical grifters like Marjorie Taylor Greene or Tucker Carlson. This is completely unacceptable. Fill the void. What are you doing? What the are you doing? People feel very comfortable taking popular ownership of legal concepts like free speech and due process and murder, but when it comes to the Jewish state announcing and then committing a genocide, all of a sudden it's for the experts only. Here's Bernie Sanders' take that was frustrating to hear once again. Bernie Sanders, talking to CNN, had this to say.
The point yet where you would call what's happening in Gaza a genocide?
You can use whatever word you want.
But Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying that she's the first Republican to go there.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Look, genocide is a legal term. What is going on now clearly is absolutely horrific. 60,000 people dead and 140,000 who have been wounded. But the important point is not what you call it. It is horror. And I think the whole world knows that. The answer is, what the hell do we do about it? Should the United States taxpayer, should your taxpayer dollars go to support a government that is doing it? That is the most important issue. So immediately, you got to get ceasefire, you got to get humanitarian aid in, but the United States cannot continue to aid and abet the Netanyahu government doing what it's doing.
Do you want to see United States personnel on the ground helping distribute aid? I mean, what is another?
United States personnel are on the ground helping distribute aid, in air quotes. It's called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and they're participating in the slaughter of Palestinian civilians. The only implementation at this point of U.S. military involvement should be to invade Tel Aviv, okay? Should be to forcibly stop Israel. That is the appropriate and just response. It will never happen, obviously, because Israel's actions are directly in line with America's interests in the region, something that I keep responding to over and over again, something that I keep repeating over and over again, and it would never get to that point regardless, because all it would take is one phone call, okay? It would never get to that point. That's why BDS is the most peaceful solution to stop Israel from behaving this way. The Financial Times, unless the Israeli government agrees to an immediate end to the war and a surge of aid into Gaza, Western countries should be sanctioning Netanyahu and his government. Yeah. And if Israel chooses not to stop, then they should invade. Okay? That's how this works. You either have a pressure campaign, you either have a pressure campaign and you have boycott, divestments, and sanctions that are implemented against the state of Israel, and that you have Western nations cut ties with Israel, and the fear of those ties being cut for Israel is enough for them to stop doing what they're doing, or if they continue doing it, then you invade. It's that simple. It is that simple. Okay? We invaded Nazi Germany. If we were actually operating on the same boundaries, if there was any sort of like morality left within the within Western civilization that they claim to care about, they would invade Israel militarily and force them to stop. Am I misremembering, or were you hesitant to do BDS initially? No, you're misremembering. I've never been hesitant to do BDS. Bernie did mention stopping arms shipments. Honestly, that's just being realistic. No. What is realistic is not what Bernie says. What is realistic is that mentioning the stoppage of arms shipments, both defensive and offensive, is only a realistic possibility if the likes of Bernie Sanders are actually saying we have to cut all ties to Israel right now. All ties, all economic ties. We have to do a sanctions package that no one has ever seen before. A sanctions package that resembles Russia's sanctions package. That's what Bernie should be saying, so that average politicians that are on the center on this issue, even though there is no both sides of the genocide, should come to terms with that idea. The position that Bernie has had since 2016, or even far before that, which is to cut off weapons transfers to Israel. It would never get to that point anyway, which is why I keep saying all it takes is a phone call. When Israel first launched its offensive, most of the world stood by a nation traumatized by the abhorrent October 7th attack by Hamas, the Palestinian militant group that killed 1,200 people. Okay? 400 military, by the way, 800 civilians. Other nations supported Israel's right to self-defense, to hold the perpetrators to account, and to attempt to secure the release of 250 hostages seized. Hamas should have released all hostages long ago. Hamas tried to release all hostages long ago. Israel denied this opportunity. Hamas should have released all hostages long ago is meaningless because Hamas has tried to release all hostages from the get-go. I think it was October 10th, 2023, when Hamas said, if Israel doesn't invade the Gaza Strip, we will release all hostages, as long as Israel releases all the Palestinian hostages. In any case, Israel's offensive is long gone beyond all bounds of proportionate response. The longer it has continued, the more it has borne the hallmarks of a vengeful assault by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's far-right government to destroy the very fabric of Palestinian society. This off-ramp that they're giving to Israel is an off-ramp that I said the Democrats should have been using long ago. The idea that this is Netanyahu's war. Maybe, with all of the untold, incalculable human casualties, the death and destruction that befall the Palestinian society in the Gaza Strip, 4 months in, the Democrats should have been talking about an off-ramp, laying the responsibility entirely, squarely on Benjamin Netanyahu's war cabinet. It is far too gone for that. It's gone. It's done. It doesn't work. And I think these guys are still pushing this line because they think it will work. It will not work. Israel is a pariah state. People are repulsed by Israel. People are repulsed by Israeli tourists as a direct consequence of Israel's actions. This is understandable. If you don't want this enmity, you have to be very loud about your distaste. You have to be very loud about your anger and resentment. Okay? I don't care anymore when people say, well, this is racist. You're being anti-Semitic because people are being rude to Israeli tourists. Okay, stop filming yourselves screaming death to Arabs, may your village burn, when you get denied service at a institution that is not in Israel. The do you mean? Nobody cares. Nobody cares about your feelings. If you're defending this, you deserve that enmity. It's that simple. What do you mean? Can you imagine Germans being like, we are being ruthlessly bullied everywhere during the Holocaust, during World War II? Why won't anybody think about the Nazi Party members during World War II? By the way, Germans did say this. Germans literally did say this. Except there was also a far larger percentage of the German population that was imprisoned in the process of resisting against Nazi Germany's violence. 800,000 of them. Okay? 800,000 Germans were arrested and sent to concentration camps for resisting against Nazi fucking Germany. There are not 800,000 Israelis that have resisted against the Israeli fascism. Okay? What the are we doing? At most, there are like 800. Half of them are in this chat every day. Anti-Zionist Jews living in Israel. Anyway. Yes, I saw pieces of the Majority Report's interview with the Israeli conscientious objector who literally criticized AOC on the Majority Report and was like, what are you doing with this defensive weapons bullshit? Everyone in Israeli society understands that as long as America is committed to the defense of Israel, Israel gets to be as violent as it wants. That lives in Israel, okay? That lives in Tel Aviv. He's the one saying it's bullshit. This defensive weapons nonsense is bullshit. What are we talking about? The pattern is repeated on a lesser scale in the occupied West Bank. Israeli military operations and Jewish settler violence have forced thousands from their homes. A small but increasing number of genocide scholars are concluding that Israeli actions in Gaza amount to genocide. On Monday, B'Tselem, a respected Israeli rights group, reached the same verdict. In a report, it said Israel's policy and its horrific outcomes leads to the unequivocal conclusion that Israel has taken a coordinated action to intentionally destroy Palestinian society in the Gaza Strip. It took them far too long to get to this point, by the way, which is why I kind of understand why people sometimes will get mad at B'Tselem as well. But in any case, Bernie Sanders being like, oh, well, I'm not a legal expert, I don't care about the term genocide, is ridiculous. As Dylan Saba correctly points to, he says, people feel very comfortable taking popular ownership of legal concepts like free speech and due process and murder, but when it comes to the Jewish state announcing and then committing genocide, all of a sudden it's for the experts only. This is genocide denialism. Dylan Saba is Jewish. This is genocide denialism, and it's inarguably rooted in Jewish supremacy. I remember in 2021 when he berated us for using the term apartheid. Sanders is a pattern of racist tone policing, but it's more dangerous here because the horror is not a punishable crime. Genocide is. Someone like Bernie Sanders, as I've talked with Noah Culwin over and over again about this issue, okay? Someone like Bernie Sanders is supposed to be a leader here, okay? What is this? Someone like Bernie Sanders is supposed to be a leader here. He's supposed to be, as the most popular Jewish politician in the country, he is supposed to be like, he's supposed to be saying like, I'm Jewish. This is a genocide. It's not being committed in my name. It's ridiculous. We have to literally stop all ties with Israel tomorrow. You are supposed to be the tip of the spear. That is my expectation, okay? You cannot be a liberal Zionist. What is this? Someone sent this to me.
Genuinely cannot believe how dumb Hasan Piker haters are. For those of you who do not know who that is, this is Hasan Piker. He is a progressive socialist Twitch streamer who is very popular. And he has a lot of haters who are absolute mouth breathers. To be clear, you know exactly who I'm talking about right now. I don't consider people who root their dislike of Hasan Piker in reasonable and intellectually honest disagreement of his work and behavior to be Hasan haters. No. Real deal Hasan haters who cite childish NPC reasons of disliking him will shock you with how dumb they are. Here's an example. I often make videos about my friend Hasan, pictured here. Him and his family live in the Gaza Strip, which is currently experiencing IPC Stage 5, which entails catastrophic levels of food insecurity and famine, all at the hands of the IOF, and I am helping direct contributions to their GFM campaign. Every single time, without fail, multiple peoples in at least one of my comment sections will comment something to the effect of, isn't Hasan Piker a millionaire Twitch streamer? Why would anyone donate money to him? Ha, so much for socialism.
I think this has to be bots, right? It can't be just like people who are NPCs and behaving like bots. It's got to be like, whenever there is a mention of my name, there's got to be some bots that write like the same preconceived nonsense. I would be shocked if they were only just bots, because that doesn't make any sense.
In these videos where I talk about my friend Hasan, I literally always include pictures of a child in paragraphs of context that they live in the Gaza Strip. It's like they hear the word Hassan and go into tunnel vision attack mode. I shouldn't have to explain how first names work to anybody besides a toddler. Wipe the drool off your phone screen, my dude. Your obsession with this man is straight up unhealthy, and you are putting everyone on Earth at high risk of catching a brain aneurysm from reading your comments. Anyways, back to my friend Hassan. I do have an update. They were recently displaced yet again, which of course means that any semblance of stability that they had was completely and utterly upended.
Re-upload because less people who know Hasan Piker, because less people know who Hasan Piker is than I expected, so I just added that context. Oh, they
are currently safe as they can possibly be given the search.
So wait, do you like Hasan Piker or no? Wait, so the kid is a Twitch streamer? People don't know Hasan? We love Hasan.
Circumstances, but they are still very much in need of contributions to get to their campaign.
He's literally talking about a little kid in the Gaza Strip that is experiencing genocide, and there are still who are like, what about Hasan? I now want to find some of these comments to see if my suspicion is correct, though.
And go to my bio, click here, and then click here. Seriously, wipe the drool off your phone screen. Sometimes
Would you agree that Bernie serves the purpose of rehabilitating Israel's image rather than to defend Palestinians? You guys, there's never been a moment, contrary to whatever some dumb on TikTok says, there's never been a moment that I have said Bernie Sanders is completely on board with this with the situation. Okay, it's just not the case. I have always been critical of Bernie Sanders' liberal Zionism, but I also match Bernie Sanders' statements with the rest of Congress. Okay, with the rest of Congress, and on that front, he is unfortunately above and beyond, specifically because of how horrible the rest of Congress is when it comes to the issue of Israel. My expectations of Bernie Sanders, however, is supposed to be that he goes way further than the average politician as someone who has been to Israel, as someone who has been committed to anti-imperialist sentiment throughout his multiple decades-long career, okay? At this stage, you cannot be outflanked by anyone in Congress, especially if you are someone who is an independent, especially if you are someone who has actively communicated a different position, who has never shied away from literally calling into question our allegiance with Israel when you were running for president, okay? The guy that says we need to cut off weapons to Israel cannot turn around and say we need to cut off weapons to Israel right now, okay? That same guy should be saying it's over. Israel is done. We need to invade Israel is what he should be saying. Yeah. Your expectation is that he pushes the Overton window for Israel by speaking boldly as the most popular Jewish congressperson, like you said earlier, who would expand the permission structure greatly. Exactly. I don't think this is an insane expectation from Bernie Sanders either. Optics on this matters. Bernie Sanders being Jewish and socialist matters. Okay? Bernie Sanders being a Jewish socialist here matters quite a bit because Rashida Tlaib can scream bloody murder every single day, but racist Americans are never going to listen to her. As a matter of fact, she's been censured by Congress. Randy Fine, on the other hand, has not been, even though he has directly said genocidal things over and over again in defense of Israel's genocide. Rashida Tlaib was censured for saying from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I have not forgotten, okay? Sorry, that is the reality. That's the same reality why so many people still come in here to this day and call me a terrorist, okay? Hasan versus no being a terrorist. Like, do you see? Do you understand? This is the average dumb American, okay? Well, not the average dumb American. This number is getting smaller and smaller every day. If I were to ask this person, do you like what Israel is doing? He would probably say, nah, Israel sucks, but you shouldn't hand it to the terrorist groups or something because they're cowards, okay? Phantom Hammer Murderer, do you like what Israel is doing? Have you taken Israel's dick out of your mouth? A year ago, these guys would say, F you, Israel's in the right. I hope they crater Gaza. Now, even these guys say, I don't really like what Israel is doing, but you love terrorism. You. Why is AOC not on the list? She is. The 10 members of Congress calling Israel's genocide in Gaza a genocide. Rashida Tlaib, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, Summer Lee, Al Green, Delia Ramirez, Bonnie Watson-Coleman, John Garamendi, and Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm surprised Tom Massey is not on there. Yeah, Greg Kazar also not on there. Incredibly disappointing. He's the head of the Progressive Caucus. It's over. AOC cannot figure out which side she's on? No. That's the worst part about this. AOC's positions do not make sense. Do you understand? Because she has called it a genocide long before many members of Congress ever did, with the exception of some on this list. Okay? She's called it a genocide already, which makes her recent statements about defensive weapons to Israel even dumber. If you think that a supposed ally is committing a genocide, you can't advocate to give them defensive weapons. You can't advocate to give them anything. It doesn't make sense. Dude, that Phantom Hammer murderer only follows you. They're such a loser. They made an account just to harass you. Wait, they haven't responded, though. I asked one question and they buckled. Even though they created the sock account exclusively to follow me. We haven't heard from them since. Sadly enough. Wonder why. Wonder why they quieted down. Anyway. But yeah, the Bernie position is ridiculous. He knows better. He should know better. He should be on the forefront of this conversation, especially as things have moved in his direction. Okay? More and more people coming to this recognition of what Israel is doing and what Israel society broadly has defended as permissible has allowed me to also continue speaking out on certain things that I did in the beginning as well, but not to the same degree. Okay? If your goal is to stop this bloodshed, if your goal is to stop this violence, you have to be a leader in this movement. You have to recognize that as discourse moves in your direction, you can continue moving unless you think that's the only thing you want, unless you think that, we just want to stop some weapons going to Israel. Bernie Sanders today, yet again, refused to apply genocide to Gaza. Even as Israeli genocide scholars, human rights groups, and courts use that term. Meanwhile, listen to John Mersheimer with Tucker Today, explaining why it's classic genocide and the U.S. should stop funding it.
Are we in Ukraine?
Yeah, I seriously don't understand her calculations sometimes. What does she think she's getting out of these choices? What are deals being made? Whatever they are, they hardly seem worth it. The only thing I've been able to conclude about AOC recent Marjorie Taylor Greene take is that her ego got in the way. She didn't want to hand it to that demon, even if it was the right thing to do. Okay, if you don't want to hand it to that demon, Marjorie Taylor Greene, then you be the person who is pushing for this amendment. Do you understand? That's my expectation. That's what I'm advocating for. I'm saying, why let Tucker Carlson, I talk to people in Gaza, okay, on a daily basis. They have access to the internet. And what they see from the internet is that it's always right-wingers that are speaking out on Palestinian lives. It's never liberals. People literally think liberals don't give a about Palestinian lives. Part of that is because the market is flooded with right-wing propaganda, no matter what. Okay? But there is a truth to this. There is a truth to this. When you have a void, when there is a messaging gap on the issue that everyone recognizes is a genocide, cynical grifters like Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene and even Nicholas Fuentes are going to take advantage of that. They are going to be seen as the prominent figures that speak out on these atrocities. Why the would you ever allow that to happen? It doesn't make sense, especially if you truly do care about the plight of the Palestinians. It's a 92-8 issue, okay? You got the Tucker Carlsons of the planet speaking out on these atrocities when 65% of the Republican Party's base of support still likes what Israel's doing in Gaza. Okay? How the did this happen? Part of that is because no matter what happens, okay, right-wingers are always going to be more prominent. Twitch's biggest Zionist propagandist, Zach Hoyt Asmongold, defended U.S. funding to Iron Dome, saying Israel needs to defend itself. He claimed he wasn't explicitly supporting Israel, only to be shut down by someone in the chat asking, then why are we paying for it? What is this face that he makes? What is that? Gross. In terms of like how Israel has dealt with Gaza or whatever, but they don't like the negative consequences of Israel doing that, which is like the Iron Dome and its security.
But the negative consequences, what he means by that is when terrorists from Hamas, like on October 7th, came over and they raped and killed Israeli citizens.
Yeah. This guy's based, by the way. Based. He's so based. He's basely defending Israel's right to defend itself, guys. Chat. It's kind of based, right? Israel's kind of based still, right? Because they're killing Palestinian cockroaches, right? Based.
And then also because you have...
Yeah. Remember October 7. That's what he's doing here, okay? Remember October 7. How is the Iron Dome supposed to stop October 7, dumb? What are you talking about? The Iron Dome was already working in operation during October 7. What a stupid argument. The only way to prevent October 7 from happening is by allowing Palestinians to live with dignity and have their sovereignty, okay? When Palestinians are no longer being destroyed, killed, genocided, ethnically cleansed, being removed forcibly from their lands, then there is no need for armed conflict. It's that simple. Guys, it's based, right? October 7, right? Netanyahu can my wife. I'm based, though.
Remember, why does Israel have the Iron Dome? Well, it's simple. It's because people from these terrorist organizations shoot rockets and RPGs into Israel, and Israel needs the Iron Dome to protect themselves. Now, obviously, this doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean I'm supporting Israel.
Oh, yeah, I'm not. I'm just saying that, their reasoning for why they have to defend themselves from these scary Muslims is sound. Who the still looks at this dude and doesn't realize what the going on? You gotta be real stupid, dude.
But let's be honest, right? The citizens themselves and the people don't have any sort of they don't have blood on their hands. They're not doing that. Why are we paying for it? I don't know.
Perishing. You are left with a country that is packed to the gills with. I mean, I'm not saying we should be paying for it. Yeah. Okay, what are you saying? You're just instantly on I'm going to disagree with whatever the Hassan is saying mode, and it puts you at odds with some in your chat, I guess. Again, it's an untenable position to have. Anyway, here's Seamus Malakov Zali's suspicion on why Israel is doing this counter messaging operation to say these starving children weren't actually starving. They had genetic conditions. I have this pit in my stomach based on how it was before. Plant the idea that all these images of famine are people who would already be emaciated or sick somehow, and then you could just pretend all the masses that will die in Gaza are media fabrications or out of context. How many of us will remember the stringent insistence after Al-Ahli that the IDF would never target a hospital? Then the hospital Al-Shifa became the main focus of its attacks. Then all hospitals in Gaza became targets with little fabricated justification. The seeds were sown. The incessant nitpicking of images of the hungry and the oppressed so as to sow doubt about the well-documented crimes as a clear equivalent. Holocaust denialism. The blueprint is there, and Israel and its backers are using it for their own gain to cover up their own crimes. Now, I think that is the attempt, yes, but I don't think the public is listening to it anymore because Al-Ahli happened far too close to October 7. And those who understood what Israel does immediately were like, of course this is Israel. And that's why there was so much enmity directed against people like myself who said, dude, what the are you saying? This is very likely that it was Israel. That's the reason why the BBC and all of these other mainstream institutions initially also came to that conclusion. Okay? I need you to understand that the environment, the messaging environment, and the opinion that people had towards Israel and towards Palestinians was very different than it is now. Al-Ahli was far too close to October 7, and Israel was enjoying a lot of support and empathy at that point, which is why that kind of sentiment initially worked, okay? 22 months in, it no longer works. You can have it's like Benjamin Netanyahu going on Nelk Boys, okay? Any other person, any other time and place, that is not going to invoke this negative reaction. As a matter of fact, it could even help Benjamin Netanyahu's PR. But it is so far gone in the eyes of the public that these are such irredeemable monsters that when Benjamin Netanyahu goes on the Nelk Boys podcast, the Nelk Boys end up getting shit on rather than getting highlighted as doing sick ass cool things with like foreign leaders. Israel is so radioactive that defending Israel at this point only causes negative repercussions for the institutions that try to do it. Do you understand? That's just the situation. And I think there are still people who are so stupid and so oblivious and so predisposed with like whatever kind of drama slop content that has worked for them, like the Asmongols of the world, that they just don't realize that this is the reality, that like the attitude is dramatically swung in the opposite direction. Someone like Asmongold still obviously falls mercy to whatever his chat is saying. His North Star is his chat, and they offer some moderate pushback in these situations. But there's only so many Hassan moments that he can have while in defense of Israel until even his community turns on him and says, nah, dude, nope, you're done. This is bullshit. You're defending Israel and it's bullshit, because he is. He is doing that. He is defending Israel when he says stuff like that. What is this? Here's another.
Remember what I said? Adolf is coming back and in a big way. 82,000 likes. I tried to tell you guys. I tried to say it. Nobody wanted to listen. Remember what I said? Adolf is coming back and in a big way.
Based, bro. So based. It's such a funny position to be in, by the way, where you're like simultaneously pro Adolf Hitler. You can't obviously say it to that degree, but also you're pro Israel. It's just okay. Yeah. I'm glad that you're stoked that Adolf Hitler is back. It's just such a weird ideological conundrum. A weird pretzel that you have put yourself into. Now, of course, listen. What Israel is doing is no different than what Adolf Hitler did to the Jews, okay? So what Israel is doing to the Palestinians, ideologically, it's fascist, okay? And there are actual neo-Nazis that understand this reality and defend Israel on those boundaries. Richard Spencer comes to mind. Well, this time, Hassan, the problem is the Muslims. Yeah, exactly. A reminder that the editors of the New York Times refused to issue a correction on Screams Without Words, even after 50 tenured journalism professors implored them to do so. Journalism professors call on New York Times to review its October 7 report. A major investigative report into sexual violence and the Hamas attack on Israel has drawn criticism inside and outside the newspaper. Remember, people tried to say I was a rape denialist for this reason, and they still do to this day. Because I said the New York Times' own internal reporting on the matter showed that they did not abide by the editorial standards. This was in 2024, April 29th, 2024. But it was very important. It was very important for Israel's purpose. Israel had to farm as much scary propaganda as they possibly could. They couldn't just like talk about the actual atrocities that took place, because there were plenty of them. But it wasn't enough that they talked about the actual atrocities. They had to say babies were being beheaded, mass rapes were being committed and directed by Hamas, all of this shit, so that people would be, at least for the first couple of months, and if Israel had its wishes to this day, be totally comfortable with the genocidal campaign that Israel is committed to. And make no mistake, during the Nuremberg trials, Nazis would say the prisoners that died from disease were only the elderly and children, who always get sick anyway. And besides, food is hard to get during wartime. This is a cornerstone argument in Holocaust denial. This is part of the reason why I despise the likes of Nick Fuentes, because he engages in this kind of ahistorical and very dangerous Holocaust denial for the original Holocaust. The first one. Whenever you see it was more like 2 million or 1 million, that's what they're doing. Subtracting people that died from disease, or there weren't that many concentration camps. They are subtracting the factories that leased prisoners of larger camps for labor. The prisoners were in crowded barracks. So how are we supposed to stop nature? I would rewatch those trials because the same lines are being used right now. It is insane that Israel basically, after all of the years and years of Holocaust studies, decades of Holocaust studies, have basically studied the Nazi line so they could commit to it bar for bar. How insane. So while I do think that the purpose of this kind of whitewashing, laundering narrative is to basically get people on board to say, maybe it's not a genocide or whatever, and these people are just like dying, like it's Holocaust denial, right? I don't think it's working. It works only on people that already are fully on board with what Israel is doing. It gives them, I guess, like some space to navigate conversations, to point to something falsely. But for the average public, this is not moving them away from their position. The only area where this works, like I've stated time and time again, is Hamas. But Hamas is the only distractive mechanism that still has some weight to it. Okay? But Israel has also so consistently said everyone is Hamas that even that doesn't work. Okay? Because it makes no sense. Like the death and destruction campaign is undeniable. Bro, it works on Bernie Sanders, does it not? It works on Bernie Sanders because he is committed to the liberal Zionist position. Yeah, of course, it works on Bernie Sanders because he's already there. He doesn't need to hear but Hamas. He already thinks but Hamas. And that is precisely the reason why so many people to this day still go along with this narrative that I'm a terrorist. I'm a terrorist. People come in here and still say you're a terrorist. J Ty, thank you for the 5 gifted. Hashem HM, thank you for the 10 gifted. The reason why they do this is because I contextualize why militant resistance exists in this region. I explain to you how Hezbollah came about, how Hamas came about, how Ansar Allah came about. I don't expect every single person to also come to this conclusion. And you can argue you can argue with me on whether or not you think I'm wrong about something, but you can't just simply say, oh, but Hamas, because that's just a thought terminating cycle. That is a thought terminating term that you are utilizing specifically to stop this conversation, bro. Will you talk about anything else? Okay, take a shower, shower 21. Hassan Reaction is one of the best ones in the React channel.